Okay, so you want to buy a stadium, pour the concrete, install the seats, wait for the World Cup to come to you. And here's the part nobody tells you. A FIFA-grade stadium is one of the only structures on Earth that's empty 350 days a year, and still has to be maintained like it's full every single one of them. You're not buying a building. You're buying the most expensive part-time asset in the world. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how stadium economics actually work, why FIFA doesn't pay for the building they require you to construct, why hosting a World Cup match can bankrupt a city instead of enriching it, and why the smartest stadium owners on the planet learned to stop thinking about football entirely. Fenfling Section 1. What a FIFA stadium actually costs. In stadiums come in 3 tiers, and FIFA only cares about one of them. The smallest tier is a regional stadium, 20,000 to 30,000 seats, $100 to $250 million. Fine for domestic league football. FIFA will not let you anywhere near a World Cup with this. The mid-tier is a proper top-flight stadium, 40,000 to 60,000 seats, $400 million to $800 million. This is your Premier League, La Liga, Bundesliga territory. Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in London cost $1.2 billion when it opened in 2019, partly because they squeezed an NFL regulation field underneath the pitch as a second revenue stream. We'll come back to that idea. And then there's the FIFA tier. The stadiums built specifically to host a World Cup. Lusail Stadium in Qatar, the venue for the 2022 World Cup final, 80,000 seats. Cost estimated between $767 million and $1 billion, though the real figure, when you fold in surrounding infrastructure, is disputed and almost certainly higher. It hosted exactly 7 matches during the tournament. It has hosted almost nothing since. That sentence is the entire stadium business in one line. Built for 1 month, paid for over 30 years. FIFA itself doesn't build a single one of these stadiums. They don't own them. They don't finance them. What FIFA provides is a 200-plus page technical requirements document, and the host country pays for every brick. Fenfling Section 2. The FIFA Twicmas nobody tells you about. Here's what FIFA actually demands before they'll let your stadium host a match. Minimum 40,000 seats for group stage matches, 60,000 for a semifinal, 80,000 for the final. The pitch must measure exactly 105 by 68 meters, with a minimum of 6 additional meters of clearance on every side for advertising boards and camera positions. Floodlights must deliver a minimum of 2400 lux for HD broadcast, which usually means replacing an entire stadium's existing lighting rig even if it was installed 5 years earlier. Then come the cost multipliers nobody puts in the headline budget: a dedicated media center with capacity for 2,000 accredited journalists. A minimum of 3 full broadcast compounds outside the stadium, each requiring its own power, cooling, and security infrastructure. VIP and hospitality suites built to FIFA's exact specification, not the home federation's, a minimum number of helipads. Security perimeters extending up to 1 kilometer beyond the stadium itself, which usually means rebuilding the surrounding roads. Qatar's total spend across all World Cup infrastructure, stadiums, transport, hotels, and the new city of Lusail built around the stadium has been estimated at over $200 billion. The stadiums themselves were a fraction of that number. The infrastructure built to support them dwarfed the buildings completely, and once the tournament ends, FIFA's requirements end with it. Nobody needs a 2,000-seat media center for a Tuesday night league match. You built it, you're stuck maintaining it. Fenfling Section 3. Where the money actually comes from. Fenfling's now the question that actually matters. If FIFA doesn't pay for the stadium, who does, and how does anyone make this back? This is where you have to split the business into 2 completely separate categories: World Cup stadiums and permanent club stadiums. They make money in almost opposite ways. World Cup stadiums make their money during exactly 1 tournament. FIFA controls almost all of the revenue generated inside the stadium during the World Cup itself. Ticket sales, broadcast rights, sponsorship inside the venue. FIFA reported over $7.5 billion in revenue from the 2022 tournament cycle. The host nation stadiums get a portion of hospitality and infrastructure-related income, but the dominant revenue, the broadcast money, the global sponsorship money, flows to FIFA's accounts in Zurich, not the stadium owners. So why would any country spend $200 billion to host a tournament where FIFA keeps the largest revenue line? Because the math was never about the stadium. It's about tourism, soft power, and long-term infrastructure that happens to use a stadium as the excuse to build it. Qatar didn't build Lusail City to host 7 football matches. It built an entire new metro line, a new airport terminal, and thousands of hotel rooms, using the World Cup as the forcing function to get it all approved and funded at once. The stadium is the receipt for a much bigger transaction. Permanent club stadiums work completely differently, and this is where actual stadium owners make their money. Tottenham Hotspur Stadium generates roughly $50 million a year from non-football events alone: NFL London games, concerts, boxing. The retractable pitch underneath the grass means the field can be rolled away entirely, and an American football field assembled underneath in under 25 minutes. That single engineering decision turned a football stadium into a multi-sport revenue machine running events 200-plus days a year instead of 25. Hospitality and corporate boxes are where the real club stadium money lives. A standard match ticket might run $80 to $150. A premium hospitality box at a major European stadium runs $500 to $5,000 per seat per match, including catering and pitchside access. Real Madrid's Santiago Bernabéu, renovated for roughly $1.3 billion and reopened in 2023 with a fully retractable roof, generates an estimated $130 million a year just from non-match day events, concerts, tours, and a retail complex built into the stadium's base. Naming rights are the other major lever. Emirates paid Arsenal roughly $150 million over 15 years for the Emirates Stadium name. Allianz pays Bayern Munich an estimated $6 million annually for the Allianz Arena. It's not enough to cover construction on its own, but stacked on top of hospitality, events, and broadcast revenue, it closes the gap between a stadium that loses money and one that turns a real profit. Hempelmann Section 4. Why most World Cup stadiums become liabilities. So with billions in global attention and FIFA's name attached, why do so many World Cup stadiums become financial disasters the moment the tournament ends? The short answer, a stadium built for 80,000 World Cup tourists doesn't have a natural tenant for the other 364 days of the year. South Africa hosted the 2010 World Cup and built Cape Town Stadium for roughly $600 million. The local team that was supposed to use it as a home ground, Ajax Cape Town, drew crowds in the low thousands. A 55,000-seat stadium designed for global broadcast standards, sitting mostly empty for a team that didn't need a tenth of its capacity. The city has spent years trying to find enough concerts, conferences, and one-off events just to cover the stadium's annual maintenance bill, which runs into the millions regardless of how many people walk through the gates. Brazil's case is even more extreme. The 2014 World Cup cost an estimated $15 billion across 12 stadiums. The Arena da Amazônia in Manaus, built for $300 million in the middle of the Amazon rainforest specifically to host 4 World Cup matches, now sits in a city with no major professional football club capable of filling it. Local reports have described the stadium being used as a bus parking depot. The maintenance bill is reported at several $million a year for a building that generates almost nothing. This is the structural trap of World Cup stadium economics. FIFA's requirements are built around peak global broadcast demand for 1 month. The local market's actual demand, the number of fans who will show up on a rainy Tuesday in March 3 years later, was never part of the planning conversation. You built a stadium for the entire planet's attention, and now you're trying to fill it with a city of 500,000 people. The debt doesn't care that the tournament is over. Whatever was borrowed to build the stadium still needs to be repaid, usually by the host city or national government, sometimes for decades after the closing ceremony. Pfefferlandren Section 5. 2 mistakes that repeat across every host nation. Beyond the obvious mismatch between FIFA's demands and local demand, 2 specific mistakes show up over and over in World Cup stadium history. Mistake 1. Building for the tournament instead of the legacy plan. South Africa's Mbombela Stadium in Nelspruit cost roughly $140 million for the 2010 World Cup. It hosted 4 group stage matches. There was no realistic plan in place beforehand for what would fill that stadium afterward, because the construction deadline consumed every available resource and decision-making cycle. The legacy plan, the part where you figure out who actually uses the building for the next 30 years, gets pushed to "we'll figure it out after the tournament." By the time the tournament ends, the urgency and the funding have both disappeared and the stadium is left exactly where it started, oversized for its market. Mistake 2. Underestimating the maintenance curve on a building this large. A FIFA-spec stadium isn't just expensive to build, it's expensive to simply exist. Pitch maintenance alone on a World Cup-grade natural grass field runs into hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, including specialized drainage systems, heating elements under the grass in colder climates, and constant resodding. Add security systems built to FIFA's anti-terrorism specifications. The cooling systems required for stadiums in hot climates like Qatar, which used a custom air conditioning system to cool open-air stadiums to 24 degrees Celsius even in 40-degree heat, and you're looking at annual operating costs of $10 to $30 million for a major stadium, completely independent of whether a single match is played that year. This is the cost most host nations underestimate going in. The construction budget gets enormous public attention. The 30-year maintenance bill that follows almost never makes the headlines until years later, when local journalists start asking why the stadium from the World Cup everyone remembers is now costing the city money every single month with nothing to show for it. Fennelgreng Section 6. The paradox of stadium economics. Step back for a second. The economics of this industry are genuinely strange. A stadium is one of the most expensive structures a city or club will ever build, and for one specific month every 4 years, it becomes one of the most valuable pieces of real estate on the planet. Broadcast to billions, generating revenue, attention, and prestige that's almost impossible to value in normal commercial terms. But outside of that month, you're left holding a building with extraordinarily narrow uses. You can't subdivide it into apartments. You can't easily repurpose 80,000 fixed seats into office space. The same scale that makes it valuable during the World Cup makes it almost uniquely difficult to make profitable the other 47 months of a typical 4-year cycle. The clubs and cities that get this right are the ones who stopped thinking of the stadium as a football venue and started thinking of it as a multi-purpose entertainment venue that occasionally hosts football. Tottenham's retractable pitch, Real Madrid's retail complex, and tour business generating revenue independent of match results. Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas, built for the NFL's Raiders but designed from day one to also host Formula One paddock construction, UFC events, and the Super Bowl, turning a single-tenant football stadium into a venue that generates revenue on a near-weekly basis regardless of the home team's win-loss record. The ones who get it wrong are the ones who built to FIFA's exact one-month specification, assumed the demand that justified an 80,000-seat broadcast-ready venue would somehow still be there on a Wednesday afternoon 3 years later in a city that never had that level of football demand in the first place. Fenferlemanig Section 7. The real numbers pull it all together. How much do you actually make if you get this right? 2 scenarios. Real numbers. Scenario 1, a permanent club stadium, built well, run as a year-round venue. Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, $1.2 billion to build. Annual revenue from football alone, ticketing, and home matches run an estimated $150 to $180 million across a Premier League season. Add the non-football revenue, NFL games, concerts, tours, and hospitality, and you're adding another $50 to $70 million a year on top of that. Operating costs, staffing, maintenance, pitch care, security run roughly $60 to $80 million annually. Net operating profit lands somewhere around $140 to $170 million a year. At that rate, the stadium pays back its construction cost in roughly 8 to 10 years, and every year after that is close to pure profit for the club. Scenario 2, a World Cup-specific stadium with no strong permanent tenant. Lusail Stadium, roughly $800 million to $1 billion to build. Post-tournament annual revenue from the limited events it can attract, occasional matches, concerts, conferences, is realistically in the $5 to $15 million range. Annual maintenance and security costs for a stadium of that scale run $15 to $25 million a year regardless of usage. That means the stadium is operating at a net loss of $5 to $15 million every single year after the World Cup ends, with no realistic payback period on the original construction cost at all. The only return on that investment was the month the world was watching, and that's the entire stadium business compressed into one comparison. Build for a permanent year-round audience with multiple revenue streams, and a stadium can become one of the most reliable cash-generating assets a club will ever own. Build purely to satisfy FIFA's one-month checklist with no plan for the other 47 months, and you've built one of the most expensive monuments in the world, sitting empty, waiting for a tournament that already left town. Real Madrid understood this. The Bernabéu isn't a football stadium anymore. It's a 365-day entertainment district that occasionally has a football match in the middle of it. Just make sure you know which kind of stadium you're actually building before the concrete sets.